You're done! The cops are here! I am the cops.
My hands trembled as I peered through the blinds, watching her fiddle with the lock on my front door as if it were her own property. This woman had been turning our quiet suburban life into a nightmare for the past 6 months, nitpicking every little thing about our home in Willow Creek Estates. That picture-perfect neighborhood in suburban Atlanta where everyone waved hello but kept their secrets buried deep. And now, here she was, Susan Mitchell, the iron-fisted president of our homeowners association, actually breaking into my house in broad daylight. I could hardly believe her nerve. But what came next? Oh, if only I'd had my phone ready to capture the look on her face when the cops she called showed up. She must have thought she had me cornered, dialing 911 with that smug grin, convinced she'd finally nailed me for some fabricated violation. Little did she know, the officers knocking at the door would be met by my wife, Laura, stepping out in her full police captain's uniform, badge gleaming under the Georgia sun. Susan's arrogance shattered right there on the porch, her face draining of color like she'd seen a ghost from her past. It was the kind of sweet revenge that makes you believe in karma, but as I later discovered, this was just the tip of a much darker iceberg, a conspiracy that stretched back decades, involving stolen war relics, government corruption, and secrets from the jungles of Vietnam that some people would kill to keep hidden. How far would someone go to protect a lie? And what happens when ordinary folks like us stumble onto something that powerful interests want buried forever? Let me take you back to where it all started. My father, Colonel Edward Reynolds, passed away 28 years ago, leaving behind a simple request that became my lifelong duty. In the backyard of our modest ranch-style home on Maple Lane, I'd maintained a small memorial patchouli cluster of vibrant azaleas and hydrangeas encircling a modest granite plaque etched with his name and service dates. It wasn't flashy, just a quiet spot where he found solace after the horrors of Vietnam, particularly that fateful operation at Firebase Delta in 1969. The garden was his way of planting peace amid the chaos of memories that haunted him, nightmares of ambushes, lost comrades, and decisions that weighed on a man's soul. One crisp autumn morning, as I tended the flowers, I noticed something out of place. A set of military challenge coins arranged with eerie precision around the plaque. These weren't random trinkets. They were positioned like markers in a tactical grid, evoking the discipline of someone who'd seen combat. We'd had some minor vandalism from kids in the neighborhood recently, so I'd installed a basic security camera hidden in the eaves. Pulling up the footage on my laptop, my stomach knotted. At 3 a.m., a shadowy figure slipped through the yard with the fluid grace of a trained operative, careful steps, deliberate placements, always angling away from potential camera views. The hood obscured their face completely, but the movements screamed professional. This wasn't a neighbor's tribute. This was reconnaissance, and whoever it was knew intimate details about Dad's service that weren't in any obituary or public record. That's when Susan Mitchell stormed across my lawn, her heels clicking like gunfire on the pavement. Dressed in her signature power suit, she thrust a stack of official-looking papers at me. "Mr. Reynolds, this is an urgent code violation notice for that unauthorized eyesore in your backyard." Her voice dripped with authority, but it was her next words that hit like a sucker punch. "I know your father was with the 101st Airborne at Firebase Delta in '69, a botched raid that never made the history books." My coffee cup nearly slipped from my grip. Firebase Delta? That was classified, a black ops mess that cost lives and was swept under the rug. I'd spent years petitioning the VA for declassified files for our family tree, only to hit dead ends. How did this busybody from the HOA know about it? She rambled on about soil hazards and community standards, but my mind raced. Classified intel, backyard intrusions. This smelled like something bigger than petty neighborhood politics. The legal angle was a tangled web of red tape. Dad had submitted a variance request for the garden back in 1987, right after buying the house. Nearly 4 decades of delays, endless forms, and no final approval or denial. It was the perfect loophole for Susan to exploit. 30 days to dismantle it, or face $20,000 in liens, she said with a predatory smile, then added the kicker. "Unless you'd like to chat about those family keepsakes in your attic. We could work something out." My attic? Where I stored Dad's Silver Star medals, passed down through generations of Reynolds men who served, valued at over $100,000, and locked in a safe only Laura and I knew about. Susan wasn't just bullying. She was probing for valuables she had no right knowing existed. That night, I dug into the county's online archives to verify the old variance file. The system was glitchy, but I found it. Application dated September 22, 1987. As I scrolled through the details, my screen suddenly went dark, not a crash, but a total blackout, like an invisible hand had yanked the plug. When it rebooted, the file was gone, vanished from the database. The audit log showed deletion mere seconds ago while I was reading it. Someone had been watching my every click, erasing evidence in real time. This wasn't HOA overreach. This was cyber espionage, with access to government systems and deep knowledge of my family's military legacy spanning half a century. Who had the resources for that? And what did they really want from us? Panic set in when Maria Gonzalez called me at sunrise, her voice a whisper of terror. Michael, not over the phone. Meet at the diner on Peachtree Road in an hour. No devices. Maria had been the HOA's treasurer for a decade, handling everything from pool maintenance fees to foreclosure notices. If she was scared, it meant she'd uncovered something explosive. At the greasy spoon, she shoved a thick envelope across the booth, her eyes darting. I photocopied these before I chickened out. Susan's been spying on military families for 8 months. Property layouts, inheritance docs, full service histories. Flipping through, I felt sick. Blueprints of my house with the attic highlighted, drone shots of my backyard from impossible angles, a dossier on Dad's career thicker than his official file. But the bank statements? HOA funds funneled to Patriot Relics valuation at $20,000 a pop, with shipments to warehouses in Texas and California matching the weights of war medals and citations. This was no amateur scam. It was a theft ring using our dues to pilfer the honors of those who'd served. I raced to my neighbor, Frank Dawson, a retired Marine. He confirmed some appraiser had approached him about his dad's Distinguished Service Cross, knowing details from a sealed Korean War battle that Frank hadn't shared outside family. Offered me twice the value, but it fell off, he said. Now I'm hearing from others who sold, but never got paid. The manifests Maria provided showed a steady flow, relics vanishing from our cul-de-sacs, packaged and routed to high-end dealers. When I confronted Frank with a recent receipt bearing his name and signature for a shipment of his metals, he went pale. That's my handwriting, but I never signed a damn thing. Forgery on a federal level, using victims' identities to launder stolen goods across state lines. The operation's polish was chilling. Hacked databases for personal info, surveillance to inventory collections, expert forgers for docs, and a network to fence the loot. Checking with more families revealed a pattern of cruelty. The Thompsons donated their grandfather's World War II campaign stars to a bogus museum without their consent. The Lopezes found their son's Afghanistan Bronze Star listed online with forged consignment papers. Each target was under duress, mounting hospital bills, unemployment, kids' tuition. The crooks timed their strikes when families were weakest, offering deals or just stealing outright. It was predation disguised as opportunity, stripping symbols of sacrifice from those who'd earned them. But the real horror? This required insider access VA records, financials, even therapy notes for PTSD vets. Corruption in systems meant to safeguard heroes, now weaponized against them. Laura got the bombshell at dawn from her deputy, Sergeant Tom Hale. 25 years on the force, the last 10 as captain of the Atlanta PD's fraud unit, and she'd never looked so rattled in her robe. Our veteran outreach database has been hacked for months, she said, suiting up. Queries pulling Medal of Honor families, Service Cross holders, Kia kin-building hit lists. Hale arrived with reams of logs. Not just names, but bank statements, mental health evals, family trees. The breach spanned 9 weeks, evading alarms like a ghost in the machine. Digging deeper, they traced ties to a real estate conglomerate owning half our subdivision's lots fronts for laundering through phony antique shops. A stolen Navy Cross from a Florida vet would wash through a Texas auction, sold clean to a buyer in New York with fake provenance. The betrayal hit closer when we grilled our elderly neighbor, Evelyn Harper. The kindly widow who'd baked pies for block parties broke down in tears. Susan said it was for a safety newsletter. Needed my Facebook login to watch for burglars. Through Evelyn's accounts, they'd mapped visible displays of medals in homes, tracked vacations, and pinpointed empty houses. Hale's nationwide sweep uncovered replicas in 15 states, fresh HOA bosses with sob stories, zeroing in on vets, siphoning treasures worth millions. The conglomerate's fingerprints were everywhere, a web of corruption that screamed organized crime with official blessings. Then came the gut punch at 2 p.m. Laura's secure line buzzed with a text from inside the precinct. Your husband has what isn't his. Attic safe combo, our anniversary. Return it in 24 hours or face the pen with him. Originating from their network trader in her ranks, leaking cases, reports, everything. Laura's world cracked. Her department, her sanctuary, infiltrated. How long had they spied on us opening that safe? What other private moments were fodder for their schemes? Hale's probe exposed rot from the county registrar's office to VA clerks and beyond bribes, threats, a slow creep into protective institutions. The tactics were vicious, tailoring pitches to widows' grief or vets' flashbacks, turning pain into profit. Realizing our targeting wasn't random shook me deepest. We were chosen studied for Dad's Firebase Delta ties. The coins, Susan's intel, the hacksaw threads in a tapestry woven over years. Ever feel eyes on you? Every call suspect. Your own government turned foe. Laura and I lived it. Guardians become prey in a hunt for war's ghosts. The crisis peaked at the HOA assembly in the community hall, packed tighter than a 4th of July barbecue. I'd armed myself with charts, receipts, manifest proof of the syndicate bleeding our vets dry. But Susan had stacked the deck. Her cronies up front, isolated skeptics in back. Neighbors, I started. Our HOA's a front for thieves preying on our heroes. Murmurs erupted, but Susan's slick attorney rose. That data stolen from secure files. Inadmissible, illegal. Maria, subpoenaed on the spot, confessed to handing me docs, torpedoing my evidence. Susan played victim. This veteran's aggression threatens us all. His combat mindset doesn't belong here. Media spun it as unhinged vet Harris's civic leader, footage of me gesturing wildly while she feigned fear. FBI agent Elena Vargas entered our lives the next dawn, briefcase in hand, exuding no-nonsense grit. Sergeant Hale flagged your file. Matches a racket spanning 16 states. Relief flooded me as she laid out photos. Identical HOA infiltrations, vet plundering, conglomerate links. They scout ex-military enclaves, corrupt locals, catalog heirlooms, steal, and flip. Our hood was their latest conquest in a national plunder spree. Vargas warned of rising peril. They've sunk millions here. They'll accelerate, eliminate threats. Desperation breeds violence. Were we next? Walking to my truck post-briefing, a glint caught my eye. A Silver Star medal under the wiper, engraved for Colonel Edward Reynolds, Vietnam '69. Dad's lost award. Vanished after his passing. We'd blamed the chaos of grief. But he died in 1997. Someone held it 28 years, timing its return perfectly. A taunt? A lure? Vargas examined it. This elevates everything. Not opportunist long-game players tied to your dad's era. You're targeted for what he knew. The anonymous tip hit Tuesday at 5 a.m. Stolen war trophies at 478 Maple Lane. Check attic. Protocol forced Laura to act, warrant in hand, raiding our home like a suspect's. Media swarmed, capturing bags of planted metals relics from distant families, framing me as the thief. Headlines screamed, local vet runs metal black market. Susan's interview sealing it. His obsession with that garden hinted at hoarding. Heartbreaking to see a hero fall. Laura, reading my rights, her voice breaking, chose duty over users, so I thought. The frame was textbook, per Vargas. Discredit whistleblowers, sow distrust among vets. Federal custody's 72 hours clarified the psyops. By villainizing me, they isolated allies, silenced warnings. Released on a plea deal, cooperate or roti, returned to stares and whispers. Ankle monitor, a scarlet letter. Finding the garden, ravaged plants uprooted. Plaque shattered, crushed me. A note spiked to the fence. Your dad was a traitor who doomed his men. Ask your shadow visitor about Firebase Delta, March '69. Truths die hard. Vandalism? No, a revelation. Firebase Delta's ghost drove this. Secrets worth murder even now. Vargas pivoted. National security territory. Your family's no accident. Dad's knowledge made you marks. The probe ballooned. $60 million in pilfered relics. Networks in 20 nations. Wrought in 15 agencies over 9 states. Tech-savvy social engineering targeted vets with surgical accuracy. Fencing to overseas aficionados in the UK, France, Canada, collectors craving American valor pieces, oblivious to the blood. Susan's backstory. Groomed post her spouse's 2019 death, vulnerability exploited. But digging unearthed lies. Her husband, Captain Robert Mitchell, wasn't a denied civilian. He was a disgraced Vietnam vet, possibly Firebase Delta-linked, booted for misconduct. Grief twisted into vengeance against the military machine that broke him. Federal files tied it. Mitchell's discharge mirrored Dad's unit scandal, supply diversions to black markets, soldiers profiting amid chaos. Dad probed it covertly. It got buried to save face. Those culprits? They evolved into today's syndicate, erasing evidence and witnesses. Targets weren't random. Firebase Delta survivors' kin, hoarding intel that could expose 55-year-old betrayals. Government moles, current brass, fed the beast, using crime to tidy Cold War messes. Susan's downfall came 3 weeks post-deal. Feds tailed her unraveling, arrests rippling through her chain, auctions freezing. Desperate, she hit our house at 10 a.m., toolkit in bag, oblivious to the trap. Picking the lock, she beelined attic-bound, phoning dispatch to alibi a discovery. But opening the door, she faced Vargas's team, Laura in dress blues, me amid dossiers chronicling her empire. Shock froze her. You. How? Cuffed. She spat. You don't know your father's real fate, do you? Ask Harold Jenkins about March 15, 1997. It wasn't natural causes. Vargas halted Miranda. That date, Dad's heart attack, was sealed. Susan's intel screamed insider, perhaps complicit in his hit. The bust morphed to treason probe, isolated, searched, coordinated with DOD. Her glare from the van promised retaliation, but watching neighbors' jaws drop as feds hauled her away. Vindication pure. 2 years on, I stand in the Michael Reynolds Veterans Honor Grove, once our backyard plot, now a 4-acre sanctuary in Willow Creek. Kids dart among exhibits of reclaimed metals, learning sacrifices cost. Susan rots in Fed Max on 18 years for racketeering, espionage breaches. The conglomerate? Shuttered, bosses doing 10 to 30. Corrupt clerks to chiefs? Purged, systems fortified. Evelyn runs the Grove, teaching scam spotting. Maria consults feds on HOA oversight. The Reynolds Safeguard Law mandates vet-heavy community vetting, autoprobes on odd finances. Laura heads a national vet protection task force, thwarting clones in 45 states. Harold Jenkins, 80 and fading, confessed, Dad's Firebase Delta ally. He'd visited monthly, honoring a pact. Dad's death? Assassination for nearing exposure of the old smuggler's revival. Delta hid arms to enemy sales. Perps went legit, then criminal. Jenkins guarded me silently, dementia-sparing details till now. Recoveries, 15,000 artifacts from 22 lands, $80 million restituted. Annual gatherings unite healed families, flags waving in tribute. Yet closure came with Colonel Lisa Grant's call at last year's event. Mr. Reynolds, Pentagon Archives. Your dad's last probe uncovered a cabal still active, bigger than relics, threatening current ops. You're pivotal. But we dismantled it root and branch. No loose ends linger. The Grove stands as testament, from one man's garden to a bulwark against injustice, proving communities triumph when united. What do you think about the violence and injustice woven into everyday lives, especially for those who've served? Share your stance in the comments. Do you believe systems protect the vulnerable, or do they enable the corrupt? Let's hear your views. Your voice could spark change.